to Beyond the Blue Chats. Really happy to have with me today Archana Mohan and NIDHI MISHRA from Bukosmia. Welcome Nidhi, welcome Archana. So happy to have you here today.
We're delighted to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for calling us, Gopika.
Lovely. So just a little bit about you both, and then we're going to be talking about the lovely book, Not That Different. So Nidhi is the founder and CEO of Bukosmia, which means smell of books, which I found out after I learned about your publishing venture. This is a global movement for kids to be heard, which was started in 2017, and it's become a unique and inclusive platform for kids, by kids. And Bukosmia has published over 2,000 stories by kids from 135 locations worldwide. That's really amazing. And Nidhi also works closely with the IIT faculty as well as G-Labs Innovation on developing fun science contents for kids. And this is from books to augmented reality apps and all sorts of things that are fun and exciting for kids. Archana is the co-founder and head of content for Bukosmia and is the author of the book that we're talking about, Not That Different, which is India's first comic book which introduces children to neurodiversity. She has written the bestseller Yaksha, the first ever children's book, which talks about the dying folk theatre form of Yakshagana, as well as How's That, which is a sports journal. So welcome, ladies. Delighted to have you here. And if I can start with the first question, which is that you are both moms of neurotypical kids. So what made you want to publish a book on neurodiversity? Archana, since you've written the book, let's start with you and then Nidhi can take over from there.
Sure. Number one, I knew nothing about neurodiversity. So let me come straight up and say that I knew nothing. And I'm sorry to say that I never even made an effort to find out anything about what neurodiversity is. When I met a child on the autism spectrum for the first time, I did not even know what that was called. I just knew that the child was a little bit different from my child. But that didn't stop my child from playing with the other child. They were both of the same age. My son at the time was 5, and so were the same child. And both of them just loved to do nothing else but, come down the slide and go around. My son himself was not very verbal. So there was really no question. But it was the adults who could see it differently. It was the older kids who, when they made groups, and they could take my son, but they wouldn't take the other child because they would ask the mother. The child was not able to respond back. And that was the first time I saw these differences. And it became very clear to me that, like with everything else, everything starts at the childhood. The first 5 years, they say, it's when the 90% of your brain gets developed. It's when you make those lasting memories. It's when you make those bonds, you make those little connections. And if something like neurodiversity were to start from the childhood, then that is the difference one could make. So as a parent of a neurotypical, and I think I've had the same conversation with Nidhi, when we were young, we did not have the benefit of the knowledge that we do now. So it is not about doing a favor on someone else, on the parent of a child on the spectrum and saying, I'm doing this as a favor on you. Absolutely not. This is for ourselves. This is for our children. Our children need to know neurodiversity as much as anybody, because it's not a disease. We're all different in some way. Our brains are all wired differently. We can all see the same thing in different ways, which means the only thing we need to do is understand inclusion and understand acceptance. And that can only start at the childhood. Hence, this book for neurotypicals coming in from neurotypical parents.
Fabulous. And what you said is so true. It's not the kids who kind of differentiate or who leave the neurodiverse child out. It usually comes from the parents to the children. Children are very inclusive. So Nidhi, tell me your take on this and how this has impacted your creation of the book.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Both Archana and I are parents of two neurotypical kids. So personally, that is our world. Professionally, you just spoke about Bookosme and what we do. So it is a platform which caters to neurotypical kids again. So a lot of reach in neurotypicals, but nothing where we can say we understand as a parent of a neuroatypical child or the child themselves.
Right.
But I'm also very conscious, although data on exactly what is the percentage of neurodiversity varies, but I hear numbers like 1 in 7 are neurodiverse. I read that on ADHD UK site. I heard something like 1 in 20 in a Stanford lecture. Whatever the number, but I think if a movement is led by 19 out of 20 rather than that 1 out of 20, that's the only way you can have an impactful inclusion. So always expecting that one parent of a child in a class to make the effort to educate everybody, I think it is suboptimal, and there's so much more that parents have to go through as well. So why not play our part? Why not be, those 19 out of 20 who lead this movement? And honestly, it's not led by majority. I really doubt if it can be truly inclusive. Otherwise, you're just fighting for your rights. It is for the majority to say, yeah, we get it. We want you with us. So that was the idea why we thought have neurotypicals lead it. High impact.
That's lovely. And I totally agree with you. And I remember when my son was going to a mainstream school, I would just wish that the other parents just got it, but the not that different is something that you describe as a movement, and you describe it as a child-led movement for a more inclusive world. So tell me a little bit about that, Nidhi.
Yeah, so we briefly touched upon, kids being curious, still kind of, conditioning catches on to them. They are curious, and I think often harmlessly curious. They also ask the right questions. As we grow older, of course, the time constraint, effort, not my problem, all that creeps in. But as a child, you don't hesitate to ask. And if we promote that and give the right answers, then there is at least scope of, making something different, even if it's for one child or more. So that's why we said, let's see if kids can do it. And then there's the question of ability. Are they capable of doing it? So of course, this is something we want. Curiosity, yes. Given what we do at Bookosmia, we have always been amazed by how kids stump us at 12 and 13, writing about class and race and, discrimination they see at their own in their own families. We had a book called It's Not Okay, which was completely done by kids who were 10 or 12 plus. So we kind of realized that it's not that this topic is not worth talking to them about. It's not something that you're like, oh, you're not old enough to understand these things. It's not one of those things at all. And kids these days are very smart. At our book launch, I heard 12 and 13-year-olds talk about things that I don't think I ever indulged thought in when I was their age. So yeah, that was the idea. And it has caught on. We call it a movement. The book is the first thing we've launched, the comic book. But while it's on, we also have a separate section now, which is purely for diversity on our website. And again, we have not segregated it into this not that different thing. It's there on the main website. So neurotypical children are reading about say digital artwork that a neurodiverse child has shared, or they're also talking about how they will react differently or how they are writing on behalf of these kids. So we have some really beautiful work coming out from them. And finally, I think in terms of impact, well, there's this tremendous amount of absolutely awesome work going on in terms of hiring neurodiverse people. So I attended Google's talk. I know you are leading that movement quite well. But given what we do, which is to, engage with kids, we thought, why not start now? You are going to meet these kids in school. You grow up with them, you meet them in college, and then hiring them is not going to seem like a very, a sudden step like that.
Or working alongside them as your colleague.
Being a colleague.
Part of life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because if you know about things at your 8 and 12 when you feel like you're being taken seriously. You are bound to stay engaged when you're 18 and in a place where you can make important decisions.
Right.
So that's where we thought, why not leverage? We always said Bukosna is for all kids, but Archana and I had realized before, we started this, that it's really not for all. We are leaving out such a big section only because we weren't aware. So, it's just sometimes lack of information or awareness, because these two worlds operated in big silos, right? So hoping that is something that our kids can bridge. And so far, since we launched the book, it has been fantastic. The target audience is neurotypical kids. And there's not been a single day when we have not had people purchase it or send us some beautiful feedback. We post it every single day on social media. So yeah, looks like it is something that had been coming.
Fabulous. So Archana, you are the author of Not That Different. Can you tell me a little bit about how you went about creating this book and what went into the process?
First of all, I have to be honest. I don't wear this author tag very well. The reason for this is just such a collaborative effort. And look at Nidhi, and she's wincing. But it's such a collaborative effort. I don't know. I'm just so not comfortable calling myself that. It's just, we call ourselves co-creators, because this book is totally that. Mugdha came in from a place of knowledge. She came in a place of experience. Nidhi comes in from a place of knowing kids, knowing, how to take this book to the market and correlating it with our kids. And of course, Ayushi and I were here to, provide the words, and Ayushi with such beautiful illustrations for this book. Just imagine you're given a brief that's so complicated. 3 women sitting on your head, and all of 3 are, alpha on a call. We are saying we want this, we want that. And that poor girl, thinks about that. She illustrates and comes out with beautiful reflections that are, I don't know, funny at the same time, but they leave you with something. They're not here to hit you on the head and say, hey, listen, wake up. This is autism. You're part of it. This is your world. It's not like that. It's so gentle. It gently informs, helps you, holds your hand, and slowly leads you into this new world that you don't know. Helps meet helps meet a new friend that you don't know about. Tells you about why that friend seems a little bit different. And once you know about that friend, you understand that, hey, maybe, we're not that different after all. Right. There are some things that I like that you like. And that is so true of children. The friendships always born out of little things, sharing the tiffin boxes in class, sitting next to somebody. I have the same tiffin box as you, now we are friends. We both wore green, now we are best friends. So friendships are formed out of these little things. And that's what we try to bring in this book, not giving some heavy gyan or, big words that children don't understand. Simple things that you can read on your own, understand, smile. And of course, when these things happen, they get into your head and slowly you begin to think about that. So the next time you meet someone who's a little bit different, you remember that, oh, I remember that Sarah had met a boy who was a little different. And how did she treat him? You take these lessons. So writing this book, illustrating it, bringing it all together came out of that single idea that this should be a welcoming book for children. That it should make you smile, but at the same time, take a little bit of lessons back home.
Right.
So that was the entire, whole idea behind how
I would just add, Gopika, you've seen the book, and we have kids reviewing the book now. And one thing that Archana has done so well, she does it in all themes, is that she adds this humor to it and relevance, like she was saying. So we have, one of the strips is where Harry Potter's charms are being invoked and all. There's another one which is about who doesn't like Maggie. I think it's these relatable things which keep the subject very light, which she has done in a fantastic manner. So it's not an information booklet. We never wanted it to be like, no autism, this is what you should do, do's and don'ts. It was always meant to be something which ropes in the reader, and Archana has done an absolutely wonderful job of keeping this light-hearted. That was our only worry in the beginning, that it shouldn't seem like either it is too it's too heavy,
Right.
and at the same time we can't say that no, everything is the same. That's also, we can't shy away from taking some calls. So Mugdha played a fab job in saying, no, you have to say that he may not talk, but his reasons for being shy are very different from another
Right.
child. So that was all called out.
Right.
But I can imagine how difficult it would be to pull all of this together in a light-hearted manner, both in terms of writing, which Archana has done, and our wonderful illustrator Ayushi, who had to make the pictures look alive and fun. So yeah, I think they've done an amazing job.
That's great, and I love what you said about how all kids love Maggie, or all kids like to do certain things, like watch a certain kind of thing on TV, or all kids love pizza. Those are the points of commonality, which makes them similar kids, not just how their brains are wired. Those may be different, but there are still places where you will find those little common grounds, and that is what forms a friendship, or has the potential to form a friendship between two kids. And that's really, really lovely. It reminds me a lot of what I used to say to a lot of the parents who used to visit me with their kids, where they would say, my kid can't do this, or my kid does this. And I'd say, everything is not from the spectrum of the spectrum. Stop doing everything from the spectrum of the spectrum. It's like, sometimes your kid is just being a kid. It's okay.
Absolutely.
Right?
There used to be so many times, you're right, where, Mugdha would say that, what Madhav does, he peels his crayons. And I was like, that's exactly what my daughter also does.
Exactly.
And there were so many things where all of us realized, oh, that's just generic to kids. Let's not think that, because
one of the things that was really surprising to me was that my kids and all their friends love these poppets, and they are the number one, I think, sensory toy that you can find on Amazon. I just love it. My daughter has it in unicorn. She has it in heart. She has it in... Nobody's telling them it's for, therapy purposes. No, they love it.
Exactly. Absolutely. I know. I remember when fidget spinners had come out, they were the number one sensory toy, but every kid had a fidget spinner and was learning to kind of spin it on the tips of their fingers. Actually, it's a sensory toy. So there you go. I mean, there's so much commonality already. So tell me, you talked about your kids. How did your kids react to this? And you talked briefly, Nidhi, about your children reacting to children who are neurodiverse. So can you tell me, both of you, how your kids reacted to this book and what their feeling was when you were creating this book together?
Yeah, so I have two daughters. One is 8. The young one is a little small. She's 3. But the one who's 8, Adya, she's quite a reader. So yeah, she was fully involved in all these conversations which used to happen every week. We were catching up on Zoom. And again, like her response used to be, I used to find it very interesting because, of course, she was curious, because each strip talks about say, why is Madhav clapping, clapping his hands, or why is he not talking? So she had a lot of questions about this and that, but I felt like she always brought in her own angle also. So she'd be like, Mama, once I also felt so shy and I didn't feel like speaking. And then, but, people who speak, we were asked to. So I loved that, she used to look for that relatability with the character, which really is the goal of Not That Different. It's not about whether you're on the spectrum or not, but if you can see that I'm different in a few ways, and it's all right, because I'm okay with other people being different. You're a little gentle on yourself as well, right? So I used to see that with her. For each of these, she had some relatability. Either it was her or some friend in class did this and this happened, so I know like this. And then, of course, there were these like we said, there's some references to Harry Potter, and there's some references to Mickey Mouse. So all of those worked very well anyway. But I never ever found her to be judgmental in any way, saying I can speak and why can't he speak. That was not a blatant question. But at the same time, I think when we're reading as a parent, we should tell that, and that's why we've added that one snippet of information. So there is a genuine challenge that many kids will face in speaking. So that has to be spoken of, but it didn't seem like a big deal to her. At 8. Maybe as they grow up, a lot of that, they may start viewing it from a certain angle and a perception, which is where we're saying before society catches up with your child, while they're still natural in their minds, read this book with them. So yeah, that was my experience.
I love that. Before society catches up with your child. Very true. And inflicts all the kind of biases and prejudices.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. What about you, Archana?
Well, for me, my son is 10 and my daughter is 5. And the thing about our calls was that, so we used to talk every Monday at 12 p.m. That is our weekly calls. And every time we would call, the kids would all be around us. So I'd have like one monkey on this side and the other one on this side. And then these kids would walk in and go once in a while. And then mother would be on the call. So I somehow felt the kids were always involved in the story as we went along. Right. And my son is very, very associated with what I do. He's very keen on what we do at Bukosmia. He says, Mommy, when I grow up, I'm going to join Bukosmia and work. He's so clear on what he wants to do. And Nidhi has been very kind enough to offer him a pre-placement offer as well. So I think one of the things what he really liked when he went through the book, he said that I really like when we discussed the book, and there was a strip about keeping your room clean. And I remember one particular day when the toys were all over the place, and I was like, look at this room. How is it going to get clean? He said, Mommy, this is how I keep things. I read in that strip, this is how Madhav likes to keep his things. And I think I like to keep everything outside. I can keep them up. I don't need to keep it back. And really, I couldn't argue with that. Because absolutely. You couldn't argue with that.
Right.
So a lot of the snippets, I think one line that has really caught on, and I'm secretly very pleased about that. He says, suppose we're talking about animals, and we say that animals don't do this, animals don't do this. And the other day in the school call, he was telling ma'am, yes, ma'am, animals do this and plants do this, but at the same time, they're not all that different, So now everything, not that different is everything. Like you may be different, but we're not that different. So I can see that inclusion, that whole feeling is coming in everything that he does. And I'm just so glad it's been a very unconscious effort. As for my daughter, she is 5 and she loves to prank her brother. So one of the images in this book comes with Madhav chewing his t-shirt, keeps his t-shirt in his mouth. And my son had this habit for a very long time. So she would look at that and like, hey, look, you're in this book. This book is about you. So, really prank him. She didn't like any other picture, but that one picture of him chewing the t-shirt, she was happy pranking her brother. So I think it's been very fun to look at these pictures.
I think that's another habit, right, Archana, that we all discussed. Most of us, either us or our kids, have indulged in. Absolutely. And when we were talking about Madhav, the first idea was it's only someone on the spectrum would be doing
exactly, this. Exactly. I know. That's true. Very, very true. That's really amazing. Before we go, what you said earlier was so true about parents. This book is for neurotypical children, but it's also for neurotypical parents, because children get their initial values, their ideas, their beliefs from their parents. And unfortunately, in our society, parents view children who are neurodiverse with suspicion, with fear, with tremendous biases and tremendous prejudices. And it's almost as if there is a child who's neurodiverse, don't talk to him or her. Don't play with them. Don't talk to them. It's almost as if they feel that the child's condition is going to rub off on their neurotypical child, which is absolutely ridiculous. And then what happens is that their children grow up with this fear. It gets internalized. They grow up with these biases and prejudices. And that in turn again perpetuates a new set of biases. So what would you like to say to the neurotypical parents out there? Because I think that that's really important, because part of parenting for me is teaching your children about inclusivity, teaching your children about diversity, that we are different, that there are people who are different from you in this world. And that's not part of the neurodiversity movement. That's just part of good parenting, according to me. What is your take on this? What would you like to say to those parents?
So I would say this is something you do for your child, not for the other child who's neurodiverse. In the same way, we are saying he or she is different from your kid is different from so many others. And I feel it's, let's not single it down to autism or dyslexia. Absolutely. Or one of these. It's this whole range. Nobody is the same. If your child is okay with someone else not being very verbal, they'll be at peace when they are shy as well, right? So in our minds, while we think, oh, neurodiverse, totally different, but we also are quite hard on our kids, not coming first in class, not being an extrovert, not speaking nicely and creating a great impression. These are all things that we pass on to our children.
Even looking different. Not being athletic, looking different, things like that.
Yeah. So many differences. When we are talking about rolling out these workshops, we are saying, even when you open a box of food in class, your food smells bad. You speak a language I don't speak. So there's no limit to it. Exactly. But if your child learns that it's all right for the other kids to be different, they learn that it's okay for them also to be different. I'm saying, don't even do it as a favor. Don't do because it's the kindest thing to do. Do it because it's right for your kid. Because I think for parents, we're always thinking too hard pressed for time. Is it right to ask? And I only think of what is in it for me and my child. Right. So there is a lot in it for your child. If you become this parent who says it's fine to be in your skin, you also and the other kids, I think you're saving your child a lot of anxiety later on, a lot of depression later on, a lot of feeling of I stand out, like a lot what kids write to us at 12 and 13. And because it's just about I don't fit in. Right. I stand out, I get bullied, I'm not part of a group. And I think all of these feelings get addressed when we say, yeah, we're also a little different. Other people are as well. Let's just make peace with it. If you start from yourself, it's helping your child the most, right. I think. So not out of kindness and not because the right thing to do, but it's the right thing to do for your child. I think that's why people should totally take to it.
Great. Archana, would you like to add?
Yes, exactly what Nidhi said about doing this for yourself and your child. We talk of phonics classes and we talk of extra Vedic mathematics at the age of 2 and 3, but we never talk about equipping the child to handle emotions. We never teach the child that it's okay to express yourself. The problem is that suppose we see a parent and a child, let's say a neurotypical child, and they see another child who's a little bit different. The natural tendency of the child is to ask questions.
Right.
That is not. At that point, unfortunately, a lot of the parents don't have the answers to those questions, and they kind of curb, the questions in some way, saying, "Shh, don't ask that. That's not a polite thing to ask." And they cut the root of the conversation right there. So what we are saying is that instead of cutting that root of conversation, encourage questions.
Right.
Because it's not just about neurodiversity. It's not just about diversity at all. It's just that when you encourage your child to ask you difficult questions, you will take the effort of finding out the answers for them. And the kind of healthy relationship that you will develop with your child, the kind of healthy bond you will develop with your child over the years, where your child can come and discuss with you about anything. Right. Especially during these teenage years with a lot of anxiety. And if you have from the beginning, set the rules that whatever you say, I'm here for you, I'm here to discuss with you, that is going to form the cornerstone of your relationship with your child. And this is one of the key aspects to it, because at some point of our life, forget the labeling, for everyone, at some point of our life, we have felt out of place. It could just be walking into a party, for instance, where everybody knows each other and we are the only one who's left out. How do you feel? It's that thing. All it needs is someone to say, hey, come in. You don't need to say anything, just come in.
Yeah.
Join this group and listen. That's all. That's all is inclusivity. Just a hand saying that I'm here. And if you want to talk, go ahead. If you don't want to talk and you'd like to be on your own, that's fine as well. That's all what inclusivity it's all about.
Very true. Well, thank you so much, ladies. It has been an absolute pleasure talking with you. Wishing you lots of success in your movement. I hope it goes on to create a much kinder, much more inclusive world. And thank you so much for taking out the time to be here.
Thanks so much. Thank you for supporting us right from the beginning. There's just amazing amount of work that some of you are doing out there. You lead from the front. And I think stories like you inspire us to continue doing what we are trying to do. We really enjoyed being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Gopi. It was really, really nice to be here. And of course, look forward to reading your book and following your amazing journey and of course, learning from you as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.